back is a special honor that doesn't come very often, so it's good to be invited back. And my purpose tonight, before I start telling you who I am and why I'm here, what I want to talk about tonight is a couple things. The main gist of it is we have basically 18 days at this point left to influence this election. And so we have a lot of work to do. The polls are coming in our favor, both here in the state as well as nationally. But we have a lot we need to do in these next 18 days. So that's a lot of phone calls, it's a lot of doors that need to be knocked on. So towards that end, I want to do a couple things. I want to share my personal story about my last 16 years that I've been involved in grassroots politics. The election cycle I knocked my first doors in was 16 years ago. I've been doing it every cycle since then. And I believe in it today as much or more than I did back then. Second, I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the victories we had nationwide with grassroots organization and like Ted Cruz and some of these guys have been coming in and winning against all odds. Because I think it can be replicated here as easily as we have in those other places. There's a few things we have to do to make sure that happens. On top of that, I want to tell you how we're going to plan to do that over the next couple of weeks here in Missouri. Because with the Madison Action Fund, which is where I'm political director right now, and the St. Louis Tea Party and Heritage Action, we've all grouped together and working down there in South County, along with Missouri Precinct Project across the state. And our goal is to make this significant impact. And so that's the mechanism we're going to use, and I want to tell you how we're going to make that happen. And then on top of that, I want to answer your questions, whether it's activism related, how the heck are we going to win this thing, what do we need to do next, what do we look forward to, are the Cards going to win tonight, any questions, I'll just kind of pull things out of thin air, or make it up if I don't know the answer, but I'll make it sound believable. So what I want to get started with is telling you who the heck I am, where I come from, and why I get involved in grassroots politics. And what it started was with the state house race. A lady named Becky Farrow, a friend of my parents, was running for state house there in my home district of 59 in the middle of nowhere in Central Texas. And she was a phenomenal lady. She's a mentor of mine and a friend to this day. And she was running back in '96 for this race. I was 2 years old at the time. And I remember rollerblading around the little neighborhood we lived in at the time. And I was knocking on doors telling them why they needed to vote for my friend Becky Farrow for state house. And I was a pretty cute 10-year-old kid. And I got a lot of votes for Becky. But the heartbreaking part was when it came around to election night, she lost by 12 votes. Oh. Now, 12 votes is a very small margin.
Recount.
There was a recount, and she actually ended up losing by 8 votes, which was no less painful. Actually, no, it was 8 votes, and then 12 was the actually recounted number. So the margin widened. But what sold me on that, and this whole grassroots strategy, and what hooked me on politics for what I figured would be a lifelong addiction, is that I realized that I could have done more. That the reason that 13-vote loss hurt was not because we lost, just in and of itself. Because I think it's fair to say we've all lost elections we've been working on, we've all lost elections we felt passionately about. But what hurt was that I knew I could have done more. Because if you'd have told me the morning of that election, Raz, if you get 13 votes, you send Becky to Austin. There's not a single person on that campaign that wouldn't have gone out and knocked on all the doors it took to find 13 people. We would have drug them kicking and screaming to the polls to do whatever they needed to do to turn out those 13 votes for Becky. And it was absolutely within any of our power to do that. Myself, as the cute 10-year-old kid I was, could have gone out and drug those folks to the polls on my rollerblades. So we could have made it happen. But there was something that we didn't do that's why we lost. And so we didn't give it everything we had. Right now, I'm sure there's with the Cards out there on the playing right now. They probably had a speech in the locker room before they went out there, probably. And they talked about leaving everything out there on the field, on the diamond. So, and I know kids across America, every time you go into a football locker room, they're hearing that kind of stuff. And that's really the message that I want to ingrain in you guys overall, is we have to give it everything we have. Because if we wake up on the morning of November 7th, and we haven't changed who's headed to the White House, we haven't changed who has control of the Senate, and we haven't ensured that we maintain control of the House and send more conservatives up there, then what are we going to feel like? Because the thing is, we cannot continue to blame other Americans if we have not done everything we can ourselves. So what I promised myself as a crying 10-year-old kid that night in 1996, when I lost that first election, was that I never again wanted to feel like I could have done more. And so every election cycle since then, my commitment to myself, and something I've done my very best every election cycle to stay true to, is I want to give it everything. And so when it comes around to the night of the 6th, as it has with every election cycle since 1996, I'm going to be the guy that's worn out, can't barely keep his eyes open, that's hitting the refresh button on my computer and drinking probably a Jack and Diet, sitting there at the election headquarters, trying to, waiting to see if we won. But what I will feel like is I'll be confident when those results come in, that as much as they, hopefully won't lose, but as much as a loss hurts, I'll know I gave it everything I got. And my hope is that each of you and the people that you have influence over will do the same, because that's how we're going to win this thing. If we don't, it'll be because people didn't do that. So since then, being that cute 10-year-old kid, obviously some things have changed. And so here we are a couple years later, and since then I've been involved in all kinds of elections, from local government elections to working in Senate campaigns to running Missouri for our organization, American Majority Action, last cycle, and now I'm the political director for the Madison Action Fund. Over those years, I went to Hillsdale College and studied political science and economics. If you guys are familiar with Hillsdale, it's a pretty conservative place. It's a real bastion of conservative principles, and so I had a wonderful time there. And it really whetted my appetite for more involvement in politics, and solidified in my mind that's where I wanted to spend my time and put my effort, at least for the several years out of college. And I'm pretty sure I won't be able to kick the habit anytime soon. So since then, I went to work for American Majority, and like Michelle said, I've trained over 5,000 conservative candidates and activists over the last 3.5 years in that capacity. Traveling across the country. It was one of the coolest things I've ever got to do, because I got to do exactly what I want to do, exactly what I love doing, and I got to travel across the country doing it, talking to activists like yourself from California to North Carolina, Florida, and New York, all over the place. And it was a wonderful experience. And now in my role with Madison Action Fund, what I'm getting to do is getting to have a direct hand in these elections and try to do my best to make sure they go the right way. I get to still continue working with folks that I've worked with a lot of the times before, like the Missouri Precinct Project ladies and the St. Louis Tea Party. 2 years ago, I think at this point, Patsy, I was spending the night in your basement, and we were going to work every day over there, just hanging out with you and Ron and Rachel, and we were going to the St. Louis Tea Party office. So this is a familiar town for me at this time of the election cycle. Now, 2 years ago, we had a heck of a time. It was a wonderful election cycle. We had a blast. And so it's fun to kind of have a quasi-family reunion coming back here. But we saw the closest 3rd District election that had ever been there. And as much as I'd love to claim credit for it, it wasn't because of me. It was because there were hundreds and hundreds of conservative activists across this district that were dedicated to the idea that they wanted to change. And so they worked harder than they ever had before. They were more organized than there was ever precedent for. And they turned out more voters than they had in recent history. And they won, or they nearly won. I think we would have won had some ballot boxes not been stuff. But we came closer to winning than anybody ever has. And largely as a result, you guys can weigh in, largely as a result, that district is no more. Because they cut it out. Because they didn't believe they'd be able to win it this time. So they took that district out because they wouldn't be able to keep a hold of it. Now in Texas, you guys have heard of Ted Cruz. He is the man you see on TV. I've known the guy for about 2 years now, know him personally and talk to him on a frequent basis. He is a wonderful guy, and he will be the senator that we are all hoping him to be. I told my little brother he needed to take a job with their campaign when they're looking for some folks. And I don't tell my brother to take a job with campaigns. I don't really believe that. Now, the way he wins in Texas, first of all, I don't know how much you guys may have heard about the dynamics of that race, but I want to tell you how spectacular that victory was. So David Dewhurst is the current lieutenant governor of Texas. He is personally a very wealthy man, to the tune of about $200 million in net worth. It's a little more change than I've got rattling around in my pocket right now. And so he decided he wanted to run for Senate. And as you guys know, most of the time the guy with the biggest bank account wins. Ted Cruz had started running for this seat about 2 years ago, or actually a year and a half ago. He started running for the Senate seat. And not many people gave him a chance, because when the first polls that came out, he was at 2% name ID. So theoretically, nobody in the state knew about him. And so what happened over the next year and a half was grassroots leaders across the country, grassroots activists across the state decided, you know what, we like this guy. We like what he says, we like his record, we like his passion, and we like the conviction that he speaks it with. The way he won that race on a candidate level was first of all, he dedicated himself to very grassroots conservative style of campaigning. But he went around the tea party after tea party after tea party, sitting down with groups of 10 or 15, 25 people at IHOPs and Denny's and coffee shops across the state, just answering questions for hours, talking to people in a way they've never been talked to before, listening to people in a way that nobody ever listened to them. And so what that did was that energized a great deal of grassroots passion. So from there, these people started knocking on doors and making phone calls and raising money and spreading the word, putting signs in their yard and bumper stickers on their car. And the net effect of that was that in a campaign where millions and millions of dollars were spent, and Ted Cruz was outspent by vast margins, and name ID, he was outpaced by incredible amounts. He comes around and he beats, not just barely, but soundly beats the sitting lieutenant governor of the state, who had personally put millions and tens of millions of dollars, I think about $25 million of his own money in this race. Of his own money. And Ted Cruz comes out and doesn't just eke a victory by, but crushes it. Largely as a result of that. So, but first of all, so Ted goes on to the Senate here in a couple weeks, and Dewar stays there in the lieutenant governor spot. Because of this victory, and because of the promises he had to make during this primary, as well as the fact he wants to get reelected as lieutenant governor, this will be the most conservative session we've ever had in our legislature on the Senate side, because he is going to make sure that every good thing that any grassroots person across the state of Texas that wants to get passed gets out of the committee, onto the floor of the Senate, and passed out. Because we told him, you can be beaten. And he doesn't want to experience that again. So because of that, not only do we have probably one of the best senators in the last several cycles that we've sent up to Washington that are going from Texas, but we also now have one of the most conservative lieutenant governors in the whole country. So it's a beautiful thing.
Doesn't he want to run for governor next?
Well, Perry's probably going to run for governor again, so he may try to run for governor, but it'll be a few years. I don't think he'll win that, though. But that's another story. The way we did that was not waving signs. It was not having meetings. It was not because we talked a whole lot or called in and talked radio. It was because we knocked on doors. It was because we made a lot of phone calls. But my brother, he was one of the North Texas coordinators for TED. He made about 15,000 phone calls in the 4 weeks leading up to the primary election. One guy, about 15,000 phone calls.
We have a lady in St. Louis that made 40,000 phone calls in 2010 for Ed Martin.
Yeah, there were some huge numbers. I mean, I remember those last several weeks because we had the office, the St. Louis Tea Party office and America's Reaction office open from about September 14th on through the election. And during that time, we made an incredible amount of phone calls. And that's how it was done. And that's how we came so close there. And Chris was not the highest number caller on that campaign, by a long shot. There were people that made about 20 or 30,000 phone calls for this campaign. Now we have 18 days. You may not be able to make 15,000 phone calls, but I can bet you can give us 15 hours. Now with the phone system that we've got, you can make up to 100 phone calls in an hour. Okay? So we have the potential to make some real differences here. When we're looking right now with Romney up by a number, what was it, 11 points?
7.
Okay,
7 back out. In Missouri?
I'm talking about Missouri, yeah.
Somewhere between 6 and 12. I think Rasmussen has them at 6.
Gotcha.
An internal Missouri GOP poll has them at 11.8 or something like that. So it's probably somewhere between there. I'd say it's probably closer to the 6.
Yeah. So Romney's up by about 6, and Aiken's right on the line. Now you guys know what's at stake with the Senate this year.
Yes, sir.
And I know that there are other states that are working very, very hard. Ted Cruz is doing a lot of work trying to raise money in Texas for these other campaigns, even as he's trying to retire primary debt. He's raising money for the guys like Jeff Flake and Connie Mack and Josh Mandel and these guys. He's helping raise money for them. Well, even while he has hundreds of thousands of dollars in campaign debt he's trying to pay off. We all need to realize how important this is. And this is one of the seats that we have the biggest chance of picking up. And it's up to us and the other people like us that are around the state, probably mainly watching the Cards game right now, that we have to get out to make these phone calls. Now, for the last couple of weeks, out of the St. Louis office and the Missouri Precinct Project lays, we've been making phone calls to identify voters. We've been calling people that we don't have affiliation data on. So we don't know if they voted in like Republican primaries. They don't have any kind of party affiliation. So we don't know who these people are. They are independents. So we've been calling them and asking them a couple survey questions, trying to identify whether they're conservative or liberal. Just a 5-question survey call. Now, this is hard work because a lot of people don't like calling, doing survey calls. If you're calling up and I'm saying, "Hi, I'm Raz. I'm calling the Madison Action Fund. I got a quick 5-question survey about election issues." And so you get a lot of hang-ups. You get a lot of people who don't answer the phone. And it's sometimes difficult to get folks to answer those questions. But that's of incalculable value. Because once I know those answers to those 5 questions about you, I can tell the best way to frame my argument when I come talk to you. So we're asking 3 questions about issue. Asking, do you think that the administration has increased or decreased economic opportunity? Do you think that you or the government should be in charge of your health care decisions? And do you think the government is too big or tries to do too much or too little? So after you answer those 3 questions, I can pretty well know that if you say you're not voting for Mitt Romney, but you think that that you should be in charge of your health care decisions, and that the government tries to do too much, then I have a wedge. I know exactly how to come talk to you because I can point out the inconsistency between where your vote's going and the issues you believe in. Now, this data we're gathering is not just for right now; it's for future election cycles. So that on the municipal election, you guys can use this in April. That we can build on this for the next couple of years and use it as a bludgeoning stick for liberals in 2 years when we come back here. So we're not starting from zero. So it's incredibly important. We're doing that between now and Sunday night. Sunday night's the last night we'll be doing ID calls. At that point, on Monday, we're switching over to get out the vote. Now, Missouri, you guys don't have early voting, but you have a lot of absentee voting. A lot of absentee ballots going out right now. And so we need to be contacting these people and priming the ground to, one, get the absentee voters to turn out and make sure they vote for the right people, as well as preparing for big get out the votes push the election weekend. So we need to make sure that we're getting as many people called as possible. Now, every day, from noon till 8 or 9 o'clock, there will be folks, except for Sunday, there will be people there at the St. Louis Tea Party office. Those are the hours, right?
Monday through Friday, 11 to 8, and Saturday noon to 8, and Saturday 11 to 3.
And we'll probably extend that a little bit on Saturdays.
Yeah.
So,
So the point is, you can do a lot of phone calls in those hours. Furthermore, if you want to make phone calls, you can make it from home. If you got a computer and have internet, you can make these phone calls from home. You can log in with your login credentials. You make those from the comfort of your own home. If you want to block, we can email you walking lists. We can print them off for you at the headquarters. There are no excuses for not being able to do it, because you can make phone calls from home. So driving or being able to having mobility is not a key issue. You just got to be able to talk and operate a computer, but it's not very difficult. If walking lists, say, "Oh, I don't have the data, or I can't go," we can get it to you. So the excuses you're trying to make up in your head, or you might think other people have, they don't work. The question is, how bad do we want it? Because for the last several years, and I know many of you, so I've heard all of you guys say this. For the last several years, we've been talking about how much we care about this country, about the Constitution, about winning elections, and turning back the clock on some of these terrible liberal agenda items that have got passed through. And so the question now is, do we really believe it? So I'll be honest, I've spoken at a lot of Tea Party rallies where if I'd have said, "Who here would give your life for your country?" every hand in the house would be raised. But if I follow that up by saying, "Okay, keep your hand raised for one to give me 2 hours this Saturday to go block walk for this great candidate," at that point the hands would start going down in rows with embarrassing degrees. Because the truth is, it's very easy to say, "I'd give my life for my country," because that's not what you're being asked for. No one is asking for us to give our lives for our country right now. But it's harder because when I say, "Give me 2 hours on Saturday," I'm asking you for a real commitment. A commitment you actually might have to be held accountable for. And so when you commit to that, it's real. And so what we have to do is stop just saying these words. We have to start doing something. And the ways that we show that we're not just one of those people that raises their hand and then puts it down when something real is asked of them, is that we get out there, we knock on doors, and we make phone calls. That's the only way we win this election. I was corresponding. I'm going to be taking a group of Hillsdale College students down into Findlay, Ohio for the last week of the election. before the election. We're going to be doing get out and vote teams. We're going to be running this with military precision. My goal is to make about 20,000 contacts with 20 kids in about 4 days, between phone calls and block walking. This is going to be, they may feel like they just came out of a prison workshop after they get done, but we're going to take Findlay, Ohio. We're going to do a damn good job with operating down there. I was corresponding with them and I was talking about the importance of Ohio and why it's important because, and this is true in Missouri as well, what this is coming down to is turnout. Because these elections are, in many of these states, going to be very close. And one of the things I've trained people on for these last several years is even outside of all the other dynamics of the campaign, if you have a good get out the vote operation in the week leading up to the election, that can sway it by up to 2.5 points, which is a lot when you're looking at the margins right now. So think about it. Between 1.5 and 2.5 points that we can swing this election just based on how good or bad we do on the ground in the week before the election. And we're still 18 days out. So we still got till next Tuesday before we're at 2 days, or 2 weeks, right? So we have a lot of time, but we got to use it wisely. It's a lot of time in one context, not much in another. When you're spending as many hours awake as Ben and I are these days, it seems like a lot. But the key is we have to use that wisely. Because there's going to be a point when that clock runs out. At that point, no more votes can be cast. Unless you're doing it. Then you cast them for a couple hours after. But the point is that we have a great responsibility. Because I want each of us, regardless of results, to be able to take pride either way in the fact that we could not have done more. And that while other people may have shirked their duty, that we gave everything we had to make sure that these elections came out the right way. Because these are things we don't get gimmies on. There are no mulligans when it comes to these kind of elections. And if we look at what the current administration has done for the last 4 years, I fail to think about what the next school would look like if we maintain Democratic control of the White House and the United States Senate. And if we're truly scared of that, if you're truly scared of it as I am, then I want you to do a couple things. I want you to want to commit to making a lot of phone calls and block walking. Whichever you're most comfortable with, whichever is easiest for you. And I want you to commit to that tonight. I want you to go into the St. Louis office, log online, contact either from the Missouri Precinct Project Ladies, talk to Judy and Frida, talk to Ben or myself or Michelle or Bill about how to get involved in the St. Louis Tea Party office. But commit to making some phone calls. And don't just say, I'll find a time to sit down at my computer. Make a firm commitment to yourself, out loud, to one of us, something. Because once you make a commitment, Bill can tell you the psychology behind this, but once you make a commitment, you're much more likely to do that. So once you make it to yourself, I want you to tell somebody else about it. And tell them they need to make one to you. Make a pact about how much time you're going to spend between here and the election on getting out the vote. Then do it. And try to find some other people who are willing to do that as well. Because if we come down to it and we keep saying, oh, well, I'm totally going to get around to making some phone calls. There are a lot of people that are saying that right now. You know them, you may be one of them, but the point is that we have to get from where we are to that election day, and the only way we do that in a successful manner is by making a lot of these phone calls. And I'll be the first to tell you, I absolutely despise making get out the vote phone calls. It's one of my least favorite activities. I would rather go scrub an outhouse than make phone calls for get out the vote. I absolutely despise it. I'll tell you what, I do it anyway. I'm going to be making a whole lot of phone calls. Because when I'm on the ground with those kids in Ohio, I truly believe the only way you lead is you lead from the front. And when I'm asking those kids to take 10-minute breaks every hour and 30 minutes for lunch, and otherwise from the hours of 10 and 9 to be making phone calls and block walking, I'm going to be holding the same pace they are. And I would encourage you to put as much of this work on yourselves as you can. Because the idea of coming to the end of November 7th, the beginning of that day, and waking up to this same leadership breaks my heart. And I believe it's within our power to change that. Where am I on?
30 minutes.
Right on.
Right on.
All right, so now what I want to do with the next little bit is to answer questions. Let you guys direct how long. If you guys want to get away to see the Cards game, you also just tell me to shut up now. Whatever you guys would like to do, I want to be here at y'all's disposal to answer questions or talk about different things, whatever you like. Yes, ma'am.
I hate making phone calls too, but I do it.
Yes, ma'am, you do.
But There's gotta be a better way. I mean, people don't answer the phone anymore. They all have callback and they just don't pick it up. How do you get around that?
Part of it's numbers game. Because I have a couple 100,000 numbers here in Missouri that we can call over the next couple weeks. So literally as many people as we could potentially get, we still wouldn't double call a single number.
And you think it's effective? Make a phone
Absolutely.
call?
The most effective, and study after study has shown this, the most effective way to get somebody to vote for someone else, or vote for your candidate, is to go talk to them at their door. It's to knock on their door.
They don't open the door.
Most people still will. If they're home, the vast majority of people still will. I know this. I know that sometimes anecdotal evidence suggests otherwise, but it's been proven time and time again. And when they do open that door, the most effective way is to walk up and say, "Hi, I'm Raz. I'm here. I want to tell you a little bit about this candidate, give you a little bit of information, and ask you to vote for him, and tell them why." You smile, you look them in the eye, you speak with conviction and congeniality. And that's the best way. I think it's a 14% chance, is about the increase I saw, and a 14% chance that just based on you asking them to vote for somebody. So if I walk up to Ben and say, "Hey Ben, I'm really appreciative of you to vote for so-and-so," that's going to increase his likelihood of voting for that candidate 14% just based on the fact that I vocalized that request.